Welcome back. Good to have your company this Friday morning. Now, here's something we haven't seen before. These images yesterday at Uluru, where hundreds of visitors lined up to climb the iconic landmark while they can. It has drawn comparisons to recent scenes on Mount Everest, and large queues are expected again today before a ban on the climb officially takes effect tomorrow, out of respect to local Indigenous people who deem Uluru sacred. It's a decision that's divided opinion, so to discuss it, we're joined by Senator Malarndirri McCarthy from Canberra and 2GB and 4BC's Ben Fordham. Good morning. Welcome to you both.
Senator.
Good morning.
Malarndirri, if I could begin with you, how does that make you feel, seeing those images from yesterday and recent days where people have really scrambled to get there to climb the rock?
Look, it's certainly not a surprise, Georgie. We've seen that perhaps over the last month or months, really. And I think like anything that's coming to an end, there's always a desire to want to touch and feel. But from my personal perspective, you know, as a Yanyuwa Gardner woman, I remember when the rock was handed back to the Anangu people, and I was only a teenage girl at the time, and I'm feeling enormously proud of them. I feel that they've been able to display the importance of Anangu story and culture and Gujiga, and I just think that you know, it's going to be a momentous day for the people who actually live and surround that very spiritual place.
I feel very blessed having been to Uluru myself. I've been a couple of times, and until you actually see it for yourself, you can't really understand how extraordinary it is. It's just
very much.
It is just the most beautiful spiritual place.
Absolutely.
And Ben, obviously, there are some who are suggesting that this is not the way to go, that it should be this tourist icon and people should be allowed to climb it.
Well, I think it's a natural thing that if you put a rock or a mountain in front of man or woman, that man or woman is going to be fascinated with what's at the top of it. And I've never climbed it. I've never been to Uluru, which is a massive regret of mine.
It's not too late.
I know it's not too late. I know you've climbed it as a young person, so I'd be interested to know what it's like when you get to the top of it. But some of the commentary around the people who are choosing to do it now, I've seen, you know, headlines around white privilege and things like that. I think that's a little bit unfair. I think it's more than a little bit unfair when you consider that there is a history here of people climbing this rock. There's now been a democratic process involving the Parks Council that's deemed that it's no longer to be climbed, and I think we need to respect that democratic process. But equally, I don't think it's a reasonable thing to shame people for doing something that's happened for thousands of years, and the Senator will know better than I do, but I gather was first done by Indigenous Australians. But you tell me, Georgie, what was it like going to the top?
It was extraordinary. I did it as a 16-year-old, and at that stage there wasn't a lot of this sort of discussion. Well, in fact, there wasn't, as far as I knew, there was no discussion about it. But absolutely now, if I was to go, I certainly wouldn't climb it. But there's a part of me that's really thrilled that I did have the experience, because it is mind-blowing, and the view from the top was amazing. But what I remember...
But, Georgie, you shouldn't feel ashamed of it. I mean, seriously, there are so many Australians and people from around the world who have done that, and that's been the generosity of the Anangu over decades. And I think really it's, you know, this is more about the coming together, I think, in Australia, that we are acknowledging the importance of First Nations people in our place, in our history here in this country, but around the world. And I think certainly when people gather together at Uluru for the closing of the climb ceremony, it will be deeply spiritual and significant.
I think Pauline Hanson's visit was probably a bit of a line in the sand moment as well, and that I didn't appreciate
how difficult the climb
was. And so when I'd read things about the number of people who've passed away on the rock from falling or having accidents, that seemed like a statistic on a piece of paper. And then you have a look at clearly a very difficult challenge that Pauline Hanson undertook and couldn't manage to do it, ended up sliding back down on a backside. That probably rammed home that message about danger as well.
Yeah, and take into consideration today, when people are doing that last scramble to try and get to the top, I think temperatures are forecast around 40 degrees there today.
Well, it's already 34 degrees there now, Georgie, and it's 5 a.m. in the morning, so that gives an indication, and safety has always been a real critical concern too.
Absolutely.